Yo, MC Starman with Alan Churchill. Matin
Hello.
con toi. How you guys doing? How you doing, Alan?
Good, man. Yeah, all fired up.
We thought we'd drop in for a Mars Jupiter kind of meditation, kind of understanding. I don't know about you guys, but that Mars Jupiter is certainly activating a lot of energies in my process. How you feeling it too? Big changes in your life too, huh?
Yeah, huge changes. We just launched a new collaboration between me and another business here in town. So super excited for that change. And yeah, the energy behind it is super powerful. Lots of people behind it, lots of support. It feels very Mars Jupiter.
Mars Jupiter. And then you brought up a very interesting point about the last Mars Jupiter conjunction.
Yeah, so I was digging into it. I wanted to look when it was, and so I went back in time, and it was March 20 of 2020, and it was the last time that I was sick. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. I maybe was pushing too hard because I have a lot of stuff in Aries, Mars active. So yeah, it gave me a little bit of a message to kind of like, okay, let's just find some balance here and not push too hard into this Jupiter Mars.
Right. And we went back and looked back at some of the original videos that we started,
Yeah.
and we found out that that's when we started doing the MC Starman show, and then the Healer and the Dreamer YouTube channel. So that was, so what we have for you here is we have two charts that we can show you, and we're going to talk about the archetypal structure of these events that we're going through. So we have, oops, no, that's not what we want. Oh, get rid of that. How do I get rid of that?
I think you can draw with that one.
Yeah, but no, I'm not used to that one. So how do I clear that?
Just, yeah, that hit that one maybe.
Okay, there we go. And then I go over here to get my pen here, and that I know how to do. Okay, so that's Mars Jupiter conjunction in Aries, and we've been talking a lot about it, and that happens during the new moon on the 30th. So we've been talking about it. So then Mars Jupiter archetypally, what does that feel like in terms of Mars Jupiter in Aries? It's a very, very high energy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very action oriented, I would say.
It's like, energies have been gestating all throughout Mars in Pisces, Jupiter in Pisces, and we had the sun traveling through Pisces, and we had Venus traveling to Pisces. So everybody kind of came through, and now everybody's leaving Pisces and coming into Aries, and like, okay, it's time for action. We've been thinking about it. We've been gestating. Let's go. And it seems that that's what's happening in a lot of people's lives is, whoa, things are starting to really happen and move, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I don't do any readings with people, so I don't get to see what's happening. But I don't know if you're experiencing that in readings that you're doing, and if that's happening for people right now.
The reactions to the readings, it's just like really releasing tremendous amount of energy in people's process.
Right.
The 9 readings this week, and it's like, whoa, it's like it's like it's and in my own energy too, it feels like, wow, something. And so there are things that are crystallizing that have been gestating for a long time, and it feels like, okay, things are starting to line up. We got a bunch of new shows coming up with some really cool cooperations that are coming up. I'm going to have Danielle Blackwood from Salt Spring talk about her book. I'm going to have a wonderful exchange with my friend Aiden in Ontario. There's all kinds of really fun co-creative projects that are getting started.
That's cool. Yeah, because like you said, you started this YouTube channel around that last Mars Jupiter, so it seems to be an initiating kind of energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that we're going to keep looking forward towards the end of the week is as next week comes along, and the Mars Jupiter, the new moon, and then Mercury is going to turn direct shortly after that, and then Saturn will turn retrograde, and we'll get together next week and do a Saturn retrograde and what's going to happen during Saturn retrograde, and then the last Saturn Uranus square. So that's a preview of coming attraction, and then we're going to show you this really interesting chart. I guess I can learn how to do that so that I don't have to do this whole thing, but here we go. Bam. And so look at this. This is the chart of
March 2020.
March 2020. And here,
2020.
March 2020, March 2020. That's a lot of 20s. And I just saw, and if you scroll back to all the videos we've done, there's a video, and then it's really raw, and I'm really not knowing still what I'm doing, and still kind of new at it still, but feeling a lot more. And so look at this. Oops. Okay. So you look at that, and that's really the beginning of our crisis, right? We just did the Saturn-Pluto square, Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January 2020. And now in March 2020, you know, now the crisis is really upon us. We have a Mars, Jupiter, Pluto in square to Uranus, that four-way conjunction there. And so that's the last time Mars and Jupiter were in conjunction.
And Saturn there too, right?
And Saturn as well. And so then we have a Mars Saturn. We had a Mars Saturn this year, a little bit earlier too, in the winter. And we had a Mars Pluto. So that's kind of to give people an understanding that the cycles of astrology keep repeating itself, and that's how we kind of keep track of the flow of our times. And so when you see this chart, Alan, what do you see?
So was this the first Saturn-Uranus conjunction out of, or is the square, sorry, the Saturn-Uranus square?
The Saturn-Uranus square is not full yet, you know, so Saturn
coming into it.
Uranus is at 5 degrees, Saturn's just entered. What happens in 2020, if you remember, Saturn just moving into Aquarius, just goes a few degrees into Aquarius, then turns retrograde and starts moving towards Pluto. Right. In the meantime, Jupiter makes 3 exact conjunction with Pluto. And then in 2021, Jupiter and Saturn come in together into Aquarius. And then in the early parts of, I think, March 2021, that's when Saturn and Jupiter are in square to Uranus. And then that's the first Saturn-Uranus square. And then we have 3 more. In our next video, we'll talk about that. But so then that Saturn-Uranus square doesn't really happen till 2021. This is kind of like the first salvo, you know, this is like the first lockdown, isn't it? You know, just, you know, and you know, so that Mars Jupiter, and that was really kind of violent change, right?
Well, if you think of that Mars Jupiter in Capricorn, you've got Capricorn as that controlling energy with Mars Jupiter in it, so that kind of like yeah, so that structural kind of locking down of that energy, right? And that's the start of that process. That's the start of that cycle. And then so now that cycle's coming to an end in 2 days time, but in Aquarius, right? Is it coming into
no, it's in Aries.
Sorry,
it's in Aries. So then
in
it's
Aries.
ruled by Mars. And if you recall, as 2020 went along, Mars moved and moved and moved. And then in the spring and summer, Mars spent 6 months in Aries squaring that Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn thing that was going on. So that Mars, Mars is the warrior. So it's very personal. Mars is my own will. So how my own will confronts the Jupiterian need to become big, to become somebody, and Saturn, my discipline to get there with Pluto, death and rebirth, So a lot of us went to deep, deep changes, and leading to the winter of 2020, many of us were going through deeply, deeply transformative experiences in our own process, so we can look at the crisis from the perspective of, the COVID crisis and all of that. But we can also look at it in terms of our own self-development and what's been going on. And so that was a really important point. And as we went along, Mars had that retrograde into Aries and spent 6 months there and squared everything. And then Mars went full term circle around in 2020 and 2021. And then now at the beginning of 2022, it came and passed Pluto. And then it made conjunction with Saturn. Then it made conjunction with Neptune, and then now it's making conjunction with Jupiter in Aries. And as Jupiter and Mars keep going along, they'll make a square to Pluto, and then we'll look at that. There's a Mars-Uranus conjunction that's coming up, very powerful full moon in Aquarius that's coming up in August. That's gonna really continue this narrative. So
Martin, I'm interested in your take on the energy difference between Mars and Jupiter in Capricorn,
right,
versus Mars, Jupiter in Aries, and how you think that flavor is different.
Well, I think that there's two things you have to consider. One, Mars, Jupiter in Capricorn is about giving form to something important. But because it's in conjunction with Pluto, there's a dying involved in it. That's really a collective kind of dying. So the Mars Jupiter then becomes kind of a, so if you look at the Mars Jupiter archetype, Mars is the warrior. Jung describes Mars as the principle of individuation, the will to individuate, to become fully who I am. So Mars wants to be the hero. Jupiter is enthusiasm, hope, what I want to be when I grow up, what I want to contribute. So Mars and Jupiter together, those two brothers, can be very, very fiery. And then in conjunction with Pluto, the Lord of Hell, and then with Saturn, the Grim Reaper, it really dampens that enthusiasm, So, but then there's a rebuilding, it sense that but then as you say, that Jupiter Mars conjunction in Aries, that gives us a different feel. Mars Jupiter in Aries, then Mars becomes the ruler of the conjunction. Mars is its own sign. Mars is very fiery and a fiery sign. Mars in an earth sign is very deliberate, they're very earthy. It's a warrior that carries a big stick. It's earthy and fire. It's really fiery. Very intuitive, very inspired. Mars, let's go. And then Jupiter in Aries is exalted there. It's very strong there. Jupiter's enthusiasm, fiery. Jupiter's home sign. Jupiter in Pisces is like the wise teacher. Jupiter in Sagittarius is the is the fiery inspirational force of Sagittarius, but then Jupiter in Aries gives form to the, so then you get a real sense that that last conjunction in 2020 was kind of dampened by that Saturn Pluto reality, and like,
Made it a bit more
oh,
difficult. It almost
to
seems that
express, yes, for sure.
it almost seems like this being in Aries now gives it a bit more freedom to kind of operate, like freedom to sort of burst forth, whereas, you know, like in Capricorn with the fire and with the earth,
Right.
it's like putting earth on the fire. It's gonna dampen it down, isn't it? If you throw dirt on a fire, you can put it out. Whereas now in Aries, it's fire, so it can really sort of explode, right?
Well, Mars in an Earth sign is very deliberate and very like, like, okay, let's do this, like we're going to see Mars in Taurus. Mars in Taurus is the very discipline, the fiery bull, so like you don't really want to get into it. Mars in Capricorn really wants to give form to things,
manifest things.
You're right. And then Jupiter in Capricorn, the enthusiasm of Jupiter is put towards work and building something, so even though everything kind of fell apart, it was kind of the birth of a new structure that we were going through, and so that Pluto, that Saturn, and then, then there was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, that was really important at the last degrees of Aries, of Capricorn, and then that moved into Aquarius, so throughout the whole crisis, there's been kind of a rebirth process, it's like we're rebuilding our lives in a powerful way. And then this is kind of like, okay, all right, we're feeling some real strong enthusiasm. And it seems like a lot of the depression that was going through all throughout the Pisces energy there, it's like, oh, wow, wow, okay. But like we talked about with Diana, not getting too carried away with the enthusiasm and not committing to too much, because the reality of the astrology of summer and winter, we're facing some real serious challenges. I think we're all aware of that. So it's it's important not to be too enthusiastic and to use that Mars Jupiter to create sustainable structures and sustainable inspiration that can see you through this coming summer and fall. And then there's a sense that the energies will really shift after the beginning of winter and into 2023, when Saturn moves into Pisces and Pluto moves into Aquarius. We're going to see kind of a, and we're going to be exploring that. So in the next video, we'll explore that next Saturn Uranus square, which, it's kind of lightened up right now, huh? Do you feel, it's
a little bit, yeah,
it's kind of politically and socially not, you can actually go into public and not really feel that much tension, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely eased up, but as you say, it's going to be creeping back over the next few months. What that looks like, I don't know. We'll talk about that in another video, I guess. Right?
Well, that Saturn, so Saturn is turning retrograde, at the end of next week, and we'll do a video on, so now Saturn will start moving back towards, so Uranus is in Taurus, and Saturn is in Aquarius, and Saturn has been moving away from the square, and now it's going to turn retrograde and it starts going to be moving, and then Uranus is still moving direct, so now the square is going to start activating again, and and that's going to happen really fast, because both planets will be moving towards each other, so that now they're almost 10-11 degrees apart, almost 10 degrees apart. And then now by August, they're going to be 3 degrees apart. And if we look back in the last in the last 3 Saturn-Uranus square, we see that whenever Saturn and Uranus get really close to the exact square, that intensity is really, really hard. The last one was, you know, all winter and the pushback that happened with Ottawa, you know, the truckers and the last wave, you know, and the real clamping down and the control, you know, and then, you know, anyway, we'll look at all of that in retrospect and take a really good look at the archetypal value of Saturn and Uranus and what to expect for fall, for summer and fall. So we'll get that done. That'll be really fun. We've been researching together and putting a really nice slideshow for you.
Yeah, lots
That'll
of cool
be fun.
info. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, man.
And I guess that's the first video we've done together in a while.
A little while, yeah. It's been good to get back on here.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
fun. And
some
thank
more
you guys for support. Big victory. We reached 375. We're hoping to get to 400 subscribers here really shortly. We got 13 new subscribers last month, and then we got great new material. So please tell your friends, subscribe, and always fun to have you. And
thanks, man.
we've been doing some work on the website too, and we'll tell you all about that. It's coming. We got some great stuff. I guess I'm sounding like Mars Jupiter.
That's it. You got to embody it.
Yeah, well,
find the balance. No, don't overdo it.
as long as you don't become possessed by it and start identifying with the mighty warrior.
Exactly. That's it.
And not getting yourself into too much trouble here.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you. We'll see you guys later. Whoop, whoop, whoop.